The at-home PD study is a virtual longitudinal observational study that takes participants who are recently completing the phase 3 clinical trials of isradipine and inosine and enables them to be followed in their own homes for up to 2 years after they complete the study. The neat thing about the study is instead of asking research participants to come to clinical research sites, is that we bring a clinical research study to people directly in their home. The study has 3 principal components. The first are virtual visits, or like a Skype call with a Parkinson's disease investigator in somebody's own home, in which they undergo the same assessments that they would do in a traditional clinical trial, including tests of motor function. We even have them stand up and walk. The second component is participating on the Michael J. Fox Foundation's Fox Insight platform, which has nearly 20,000 participants in it and enables people to complete surveys at their own time quarterly. And the third component is a smartphone application called Empower. It was developed in 2015. The next generation of that application is coming out later this summer or early fall. It enables people to do assessments on their phone, including tapping on their phone, using the phone to measure their gait and balance, and it can be done anytime, anywhere by almost anyone in the study, anyone who's got a smartphone. And we're hoping that these 3 different assessments, those conducted through the video visits with a Parkinson's disease investigator, those conducted on the Fox Insight platform, and those conducted on the smartphone application, will allow us to develop new insights into the disease, especially about how the disease affects people in their real-world settings, not just in the clinic. And the first of a kind study that brings studies to them instead of asking participants to come to studies. I really became interested in Parkinson's disease when I was a neurology resident at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And there I had the chance to interact with people who had Parkinson's disease. And the nice thing about the condition from a clinician standpoint is that it's primarily diagnosed based on observation and listening to a patient. And you can make patients a lot better. And they're very appreciative. And so for a clinician to be able to use your skills of listening, observing, and examining, to be able to provide a therapy to people that's highly effective and makes a difference in their life, and to have an appreciative group, that's about as good as it gets for Parkinson's disease. I've had the really good fortune to train a number of great people at the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Andrew Sideroff, Matthew Stern, Howard Herdig. I had the chance during my residency to spend a month at Rush University learning from Dr. Chris Getz, and then had tremendous training at the University of Rochester with Dr. Ira Scholson, Dr. Carl Kieberts, and many others, including Dr. Bernard Ravina, who used to be at NINDS. So if you think about the way we provide care to people with Parkinson's disease or the way we conduct research, we kind of have it backwards. We ask sick patients who generally have some mobility impairment and often driving impairment to drive to research centers or clinical centers to see us generally healthy clinicians on our terms. Instead, it should be the clinicians coming to care for patients on their terms, or for the researchers coming to ask people to participate in research around their schedule, not around my schedule. And it's hard for me to drive to see all the people that have Parkinson's disease in upstate New York, but it's not hard for me to connect to people using technology that we have around with us in the early 21st century, including video visits, which grandparents are using to communicate with their grandchildren. Now we're using those same tools and technologies, and now older individuals with Parkinson's disease to connect to their clinicians to receive care. And so we have a program right now in New York State, which we enable anyone anywhere in the state of New York to receive care from us for free, so long as they have Parkinson's disease and they reside in the state of New York and speak English. And now we have research studies like Empower, which are open to anyone in the United States that has a smartphone and can participate in research on their own terms. And at-home PD is just a natural extension of that, taking people who are completing a phase 3 clinical trial and to follow them virtually in their own homes and with their own devices to learn more about Parkinson's disease, to engage them in research and develop new insights around the disease that we hope lays the foundation for future studies and future therapies for people affected by the condition. At-home PD is the result of tremendous collaboration with Dr. Tanya Sumuni and her team at Northwestern, Dr. Michael Schwarzschild and his team at Massachusetts General Hospital, Laura Munger-Viti and Larson Umberg at Sage Bionetworks, and our colleagues at the University of Rochester to develop a new paradigm of a clinical study. Most clinical studies are centered around the site, and participants in the study have to live near that site and have to go to that site to participate in the study. At Home PD is saying, we don't care too much about the site, we care a lot about you, and we want to arrange the study to be focused around your needs and the way you want to participate and when you want to participate. So we hope that this model, whereby we bring research to participants and they can participate literally in their home or on their mobile devices, not only helps people with Parkinson's disease, but is widely applicable to a wide range of conditions, especially for diseases that are rare, where the geographic dispersion of the population is large, and there aren't sites that will have a large ready access to a study population. Or many people who live in Pensacola, Florida, or Corning, New York, or Bakersfield, California want to participate in research, but right now they really don't have a great way of doing that unless they want to travel, often at a considerable burden and cost to them to participate in research. And we think that this study, although just open to the people who've completed the phase 3 studies of inosine and isradipine, lays the foundation for providing a new means of conducting research that enables anyone, anywhere, to participate in research. In addition to changing the way a study is conducted, the study is conducting new sources of data that had previously not been thought to be included in a clinical trial. So we're doing traditional clinical assessments with the traditional rating scales in people's homes, but we're using smartphones to measure people's symptoms in an objective way. And these data, which can provide new insights into how Parkinson's affects gait and balance, are analyzed by a new generation of researchers called data scientists who might have trainings in physics or computer science or mathematics. And they're able to analyze these data and get this new signatures of Parkinson's disease that can be very sensitive and, importantly, are objective and are obtained in real-world settings. So no longer do we have to judge Parkinson's disease by how someone is affected at a particular point in time in an artificial environment like a clinic, but we can get insights into the disease frequently in real-world settings, including people's homes, including people bicycling, wherever they may be. How the study will ultimately help people with Parkinson's disease remains to be determined. We found in some of our earlier work with smartphones that we can develop an objective outcome measure called the Mobile Parkinson's Disease Score that can give you an objective, quantifiable score from 0 to 100, 0 being unaffected to 100 most severely affected of someone's Parkinson's disease. And we can do that for just about anyone who has a smartphone, anytime that they want to conduct the assessment, and anywhere that they are. Before, our only way of assessing Parkinson's disease is how people were doing in an artificial environment called the clinic at an arbitrary time called a clinic appointment. And that provides us, a nice assessment, but that assessment represents less than 0.1% of a person's life with Parkinson's disease. And we're hoping that these new objective real-world assessments of Parkinson's disease can provide us deeper insights into the disease and better ways of measuring the disease. And why is it important to have a better measure of the disease? The reason it's important to have a better measure of the disease is because when you have a better measure, you can tell whether a drug works or doesn't work in a short period of time with a small number of people. The reason we have great drugs for HIV is because we have something called CD4 counts and viral loads, which objectively measure HIV, and you can rapidly screen a drug and determine if that drug works or doesn't work. Why do we have so many drugs for cardiovascular disease? Because we have something called cholesterol that we can measure in the blood, and we can rapidly screen compounds to tell if they work or they don't work. For Parkinson's disease, for Alzheimer's disease, we have really poor measures. We have terrific rating scales, which are great. Those rating scales take a long period of time to change, and they rely on trained clinicians to administer them, generally in research sites. And if we have objective measurements of people's disease, again, a smartphone that can quickly tell us how somebody's doing and can give us insights not once every 3 months, but multiple times per day, we get closer and closer to having better measures of disease, which tells us whether a new drug or device or new care model works, and whether that works in a shorter period of time with a smaller number of people at lower costs, so it can accelerate the time until we have new therapies for Parkinson's that make a difference in people's lives. The aim of our research as a whole is to enable anyone, anywhere to participate in research. And before that was largely impossible simply because of the logistics of the way we conducted research by asking people to come to research sites. You had to, one, live near a research site, two, have the means to come to a research site, and to be able to do that for long periods of time. We think that the future that at-home PD and studies like it changes the paradigm whereby clinical studies come to research participants, enabling broader participation in research, not only geographically, but we also hope socially. We know, for example, that African Americans are much less likely to participate in research. We know that other populations, especially those from lower socioeconomic status, are less likely to participate in research. We hope that by not asking those individuals to come see us on our terms, but by bringing research to them so they can participate in those studies on their terms, it will decrease the barriers to participating and make these studies much more centered on participants instead of research sites. There are clinical trials that are being done that are regulated by the FDA that are being done completely virtual. There's a company called Science 37. I don't have any relationship to them except I know their CEO, who's a great guy. And they're doing completely virtual clinical trials for dermatology. Pfizer 10 years ago did a phase 4 clinical trial of Detrol LA, a drug used to treat overactive bladder. And they did that entire study remotely. They had trouble recruitment, they had trouble some small aspects of the study, but overall demonstrate the feasibility of this. It's odd that we, again, ask people who are sick and burdened by disease to participate in clinical trials on my terms. I should be designing clinical trials that enable people with these diseases to participate on their terms, and at-home PD is the first step in that direction. The nice thing about these studies is that you can actually get results back in real time. I haven't figured out what we're doing in at-home, but in Empower 1.0, I could do tests on the smartphone, and I won't do the test right now, but I literally just tap on the screen as fast as I can for about 20 seconds, and I get the results back in real time. So these are what my tapping scores are for my performing the test over the last year, and you can see over the last year my scores have remained relatively stable. Fortunately, I don't have Parkinson's disease, or at least I don't have Parkinson's disease yet. But people with Parkinson's disease, for example, can do these assessments themselves and see how well they're doing. They can track their own progression over time or lack thereof. Maybe they're exercising vigorously to help their Parkinson's disease, and they're seeing improvements in their symptoms, and they can actually measure that themselves. They can see how they do on a cold day, on a hot day, before they exercise, after they exercise, after a good night's sleep, after a bad night's sleep, before they take their medicine, after they take their medicine, before they have an argument with their spouse, after they have an argument with their spouse. Whatever they want to do, they're in control of their data. They can see the results. They get it in real time. They can derive insights into the disease that a clinician would never get seeing a patient 1 hour every 3 months.